If you're moving to Salem, Oregon, you're probably researching what it's like to live here. And as part of that research, you're probably noticing some online posts that aren't very good, and maybe those online posts are making you doubt your decision to relocate to Salem. So in this video, I'm going to go over some Reddit posts found within the Salem, Oregon subreddit and give you my perspective as somebody who is also relocated here. If you're new to my channel, my name is Clarity Odd, and I'm a local real estate agent who focuses on working with buyers who are relocating to little old Salem, Oregon. If you want to work together, go down to the description of any of my videos and schedule a one-on-one consultation. All right, let's jump right in. All of the information that I provide in this video are the replies to the post that somebody made asking if Salem sucked or if it was a good place to live or not. So these are the answers that random internet people gave. The first Reddit reply says, after 15 years in the Bay Area, California, and then 10 years in Canada's capital city, I moved here. No good reason other than it was back on the semi-normal weather of the West Coast of the continent and near my family in Portland without the Portland prices. Salem reminds me of San Jose back in the early 90s. This is a compliment. Lots of beautiful parks, small museums of specific interest. People are generally friendly face-to-face, and really a bedroom town where everything closes down too early to have a nightlife. Now, here's my take on this comment. This person mentioned that they lived in the Bay Area and in Canada's capital city. And for this person, it sounds like they didn't move to Salem for any one particular reason, but they found the affordability of Salem was much better than compared to a place like Portland, which is only an hour north. I'm also hearing a lot of my own clients who are relocating to Salem that they love the idea of living on the West Coast and having those cozy Pacific Northwest rainy winters, but they don't really like the idea of spending a whole heck of a lot of money to live on the West Coast. Now, the topic of affordability is going to be relative based on where you're coming from, so I'm going to speak very specifically to my future California clients who are watching this video. Salem is the most affordable West Coast city that you can find in Oregon. Yes, there are places like Eugene, Corvallis, Bend, Oregon, and then you have the entire coastline of Oregon that you can certainly buy a house in, but Salem is the most affordable out of all of those places. The median sales price for a home right now in Salem is at $435,000, which is far less than any of the other cities that I just mentioned. So if affordability is on your list of concerns when you're purchasing a house, I strongly encourage you to research Salem as an affordable alternative to a place like Portland or Eugene, Oregon. Now, this commenter, they also mentioned that Salem reminds them of San Jose, California back in the 90s. I do not know what San Jose, California was like in the early 90s, but I can tell you that this commenter is spot on in saying that we have beautiful parks, small museums of specific interest, and people who are generally friendly face-to-face. This person also mentions that Salem feels like a bedroom town where everything closes down a bit too early to have a good nightlife. Now, I can definitely say that we have a lot of amazing parks that are super accessible throughout the city. And I think a really cool feature that Salem has is that nearly every neighborhood around town is going to have a community park of some kind. Sometimes these parks come in the form of a school that has an open field where you can take your dog, or you can just go on a walk around it. But sometimes it also means that there are dedicated neighborhood parks that are open to the public, tucked away around the houses in the neighborhood. And I have a few favorite parks around town, but right now I'm really enjoying exploring Minto Brown Park, which is right across the river from downtown Salem. I actually just discovered a secret, not so secret part of this park, and it's really throwing me for a loop because I thought after 5 years of living here, I would know this park like the back of my hand, but it continues to surprise me in the best kind of ways. One of the highlights of Minto Brown Park is that there is a massive off-leash dog park where you can take your doggo and just let them run wild with all of the other happy puppies. This park is a real testament to the city of Salem investing in the infrastructure of our city. Now, moving on to the topic of nightlife in the city of Salem, or rather lack thereof, this commenter said that everything closes down too too early for there to be nightlife here. And I completely agree. I'm at the season in my life where having a nightlife beyond just getting a good meal and good drinks with my husband or my friends, that's my ideal night out. But if you, my friend, are at the season of your life where you are still loving the idea of going out and being entertained and having that hum from a big city during the night, you're not going to find that here in Salem. And if you want a super vibrant nightlife, you are going to need to go to a place like Portland to get those needs met. Here in Salem, it's completely true that everything shuts down pretty darn early, which means that unless you are hanging out at a restaurant, you should expect that all of the shops and the other retail spaces in the downtown corridor close very early in the evening time, around 6 to 7 p.m. When I first relocated to Salem, this totally caught me off guard because downtown felt like a dead zone in the evening time, and I was coming from Portland, so I was used to having the hum of the city, and without that vibrancy, the downtown really felt eerie, felt so silent, and there weren't very many people downtown in the evening, which made for a little bit of a strange adjustment because I didn't have that expectation. I thought downtown Salem was going to be just as vibrant as the city of Portland. Now that I've been here for 5 years, I understand the flow of the city and the rhythm that it has, so it doesn't bother me now. And if I want those big city vibes, I just need to drive an hour north to Portland and have a little overnight adventure with my husband, and we're good to go. So do be mindful that if you're relocating to Salem, the downtown area is a little bit subdued when you compare it to a bigger city. The next Reddit commenter says, "I like it. It has problems, but they are ones that I choose to put up with, and I prefer them to the problems of other places that I've lived. I can see how it would be disappointing for someone, but not me. I love the quiet, humble people and an accessibility to nature and amenities. I love Portland, but it's too expensive. I don't like New York, it's too frantic. I lived in KC and it was too violent. We should celebrate our neighbors and get involved. It's small enough that everyone matters here." And I completely agree with what this Reddit commenter has to say, that there's going to be problems in every single city or town that you move to. It just depends on what problems and issues you are comfortable facing. No place is perfect, and it's really important for you to do research about Salem to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident in the decision to move here. I have almost 100 videos dedicated to what it's actually like living in Salem from the perspective of somebody who is also relocated here. And that's going to be a really great starting point for you to begin your research about Salem. Read the comments of my videos and you are going to be able to form a picture of what the issues around living in Salem might be, and if those are problems that you're comfortable with or not. I believe that the largest problem that Oregon faces as a whole is our homeless crisis. If you are coming from a city or state that is not very familiar with having homeless people around town, this is going to be a very large adjustment for you. I relocated from Portland, and so the homeless crisis is something that I grew up with. It was something that was normal, and it just wasn't that big of a deal when I came down to Salem. But I do know firsthand from my clients who are relocating to Salem from other states that don't have a homeless crisis, this is something that they bring up time and time again as a shock to their system. My clients always mention that it's taken them a little bit of time to get accustomed to seeing people camp out in city parks or sitting on the sidewalk. So do be mindful that Salem is not the right place for everyone, and that it really depends on what you feel comfortable with in terms of the problems that the city of Salem faces. The next Reddit commenter says, "The hardest thing to recreate, in my opinion, is public transit infrastructure. I wish we had light rails and better/more bike lanes and more frequent bus schedules, but the volume of users we have cannot support it. Driving here isn't too bad, but I really appreciate the public transit amenities of a larger city." Now, this commenter brings up a really great point that is actually something that I'm frustrated by as well, and that is the public transit infrastructure here in Salem, or rather lack thereof. I deem Salem as 100% car dependent because you really need to have your car to function in this city. If you do not have a car, it is going to be very difficult for you to get around town depending on where exactly you live. But we do not have a trolley system or a subway system or a light rail system. We do have bike lanes, but honestly, nobody knows how to drive around bicycles in this city, and I think it's an incredibly dangerous mode of transportation in the city of Salem because we lack the proper understanding of how to drive next to bicycles. So if you are coming from a big city where you have city infrastructure that allows for alternative modes of transportation, you might be shocked to learn that Salem, it just doesn't have that infrastructure to allow for a robust public transportation network, or even having alternative options for most people. I came from a city that had a great public transportation infrastructure, and I was used to taking the bus and walking and hopping on the trolley and off of the trolley, but Salem just doesn't have that. It took me a long time to get used to this concept of literally anywhere I wanted to go, I need to jump in my car and drive there. At the end of the day, I don't mind driving more, but I do wish that I had alternative options to get across town that weren't going to be my car and my car alone. This Reddit commenter made a comment that the volume of users we have in Salem cannot support a public transit infrastructure. And I never really thought about it in these terms before reading this comment, but they're 100% accurate because Salem has less than 200,000 residents. And so with those numbers, you just really can't invest a lot into the public transportation infrastructure to make it pay off. This commenter didn't bring this next topic up, but I do want to mention that if you are somebody who travels a lot for work or leisure, we are only an hour south of the Portland International Airport, and Salem does have its own small commercial airport. The Salem airport is itty bitty, and it just has a few flights from California and Vegas and maybe Tennessee now, so it's not like an airport that you can really depend on for too much. But again, you are only an hour south of the Portland International Airport, which is a huge benefit because you are going to be able to escape the rainy winter days very quickly. This next Reddit comment says, having grown up in Phoenix, I personally love just how much smaller Salem is. I love that anything I need to get is no more than half an hour away. Also, the coast, yes please. What's kept me here has been the ability to experience all 4 seasons in their entirety instead of just the summer and 3 variants of it. That and the community I've been blessed to establish and grow since I've been living here. Sure, it has a lot of issues that need addressing and it can get nasty and violent at times, but what city doesn't have problems? We aren't perfect by any stretch, and we can definitely do better. That said, I think Salem is great and I'm happy here. This person talks about the ideal location of Salem. You are about an hour and a half away from the Pacific Ocean and the Oregon coast. You're about an hour south from Portland. You can be in Central Oregon in about 2.5 hours, and Salem is really positioned perfectly to get you anywhere around Oregon pretty darn fast. I know for a lot of my clients who find me on YouTube that you guys also love being outside just as much as I do, and you are going to be so happy to know that it is just a way of life here to be outside. And even though it rains here quite a bit, us Oregonians and transplants, we just love being in Mother Nature. So if that sounds like you are gonna fit in just fine. This person also mentions that we do in fact have 4 distinct seasons here in Salem. And I don't mean the 4 Seasons Hotel because we don't have that whatsoever. I mean that we have summer, fall, winter, and spring. And with each of those seasons, we have different weather patterns. We have different sun seasonalities, which means that the sun is going to set at different times depending on the day of the year. And overall, we have a very mild climate climate compared to a lot of other places. Although we do have a more mild climate than a lot of other places, that doesn't exclude us from having extreme hot days or extreme cold days in the winter, but it does mean that overall we have a pretty moderate range of temperatures that we fall into at any given point in the year. So typically you can expect that the summertime is going to be anywhere from about 75 to 100 degrees. In the fall, you can expect that the weather is going to be about 40 to 55 degrees, and the leaves start to change and they fall to the ground. And then in the winter, you can expect that the temperatures are going to be anywhere from about 45 to 30 degrees. The winter is when we get most of our rainfall, but then come spring, the rain tapers off and you can expect the temperatures to be anywhere around the 50 to 60 degree mark. Do be mindful that we get a lot of rain here in the Pacific Northwest, and the rainy season lasts for about 8 to 9 months. So be prepared for rain and gray skies and just a malaise that comes with that. Here, the summertime really only lasts 3 to 4 months, which is why everyone gets so excited when we see the sun. Us Oregon lizards, we need to warm up and feel the sun to regain our sanity. The next Reddit post says, Salem sucks a little bit, but it's the only place in Oregon I'd want to live. Here's why. It's close to the beach, the mountains, wine country, etc. And it's easy to leave. You can be outside of Salem in 10 minutes. Plus, Salem itself is not crowded. It's easy to find parking, and you don't usually have to wait in line for food or entertainment. Downtown is cute, people are mostly nice, and it has less homogeneous population than, say, Eugene or Portland. We have a great bookstore, tremendous park system, and decent Mexican food / bakeries. And it's a small enough town that you can have impromptu parties that most people can get to in 15 minutes. I'd like to see better transit and more affordable housing, but overall, Salem is delightfully mediocre, and that suits me. Like this commenter mentioned, Salem is not too crowded. You can usually find parking and you don't have to wait in line for food or entertainment. They also say that it has less homogeneous population than Eugene or Portland. And these are 2 points that I want you to take away from this comment specifically. So let's first talk about the lack of crowds that we have here in Salem, because we have under 200,000 people living here in the greater Salem area. So we don't have to fight people in traffic for 45 minutes to drive a mile or 2 down the road. We do not need to struggle to find parking on most days if you are going downtown. And we certainly don't have to fight crowds when we are just walking on the sidewalks downtown. Salem is not too crowded, and if you are like my clients who are relocating from larger population areas, you are going to be so excited about living in a place where it's not very crowded. Salem is going to allow you to just breathe and ditch the freneticness of a big city and all of the issues that come with crowded spaces. This commenter also says that Salem is less homogeneous than Eugene or Portland, and I want to tackle this head on and say that Oregon as a whole is very homogenous when it comes to diversity. There are a lot of Caucasians here in Oregon, and Salem is no different. But to this person's point, yes, Salem is less homogenous than Portland or Eugene, but if you are coming from a city or state that has ample diversity, you are going to be shocked by the lack of diversity here in Salem and Oregon as a whole. Don't interpret that as Salem not being a welcoming place to all kinds of people, but I simply want you to take away that if you have not lived in a homogeneous state or town or city, you need to adjust yourself to what a lack of diversity looks like, because unfortunately, Salem is just not very diverse. I encourage you to look through all of the Reddit posts about living in Salem, Oregon, if you haven't done that already. And if you need the link to get to this specific post that I was grabbing comments from today in this video, go down to the description where you will find a link to that Reddit post specifically. It's really important that you research and listen to everybody's collective voice about what it's like living in Salem, because my voice is not the only one out there, and I encourage you to read all of the information you can on the internet and then decide if Salem is the right place for you or not. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to want to watch this one next. Bye, friends!